This is a way, in a conversation several years ago, of trying to lead to a point that can we start a structure? And can we start by holding, first off, a championship and a festival for breeders and riders, owners to be able to funnel their interest into our younger horses. So we're joined on a panel here. To my right is Scott Hassler, who is the young horse coach for the dressage discipline. We have Mary Babbitt from the Hunter world, who is the chairman of the Hunter group and working group for the USHJA. Robert Ridland, who is the chef de keep of jumping in his first successful year, and will add a lot to it. And I also want to introduce Karsten Huck, who is from Germany. He's a judge. He joined us to, he's a judge and in jumping and eventing. And obviously the Germans have their Bundeschampionship, which is a huge, very well organized and long-running young horse structure and program. And Karsten's come here to really help us, enlighten us, hopefully, and also help us with a structure about how this would work. And last but not least, we have Chester Weber from driving, a 10-time U.S. national champion, and really our leading driver here in the United States in this last 7 or 8 years. And it has been, and also just coming off a very successful season and getting ready for the World Championships next year, who produces a lot of his own horses and over these years. And I think from the sport of driving, will really add to how do we look at a young horse program from top to bottom. So I just wanted to read at the beginning, before we start, really an overview of what this idea is, right? This is the inaugural one, will be next year in 2014. And it'll be held in the fall, and it's to showcase young horses from multi-disciplines. So this is the first time that really all of the disciplines are getting together and trying to promote a young horse thing across the United States instead of each one of us doing different, because there are individual programs within each one of the disciplines already. And how do we start to come together and, like the Bundeschampionship idea in Germany, and having multiple disciplines come together and showcase the American, especially, hopefully, American bred horses as we come here. So it really be the showcase for the best young horses in the United States in dressage, driving, eventing, the hunters, and jumping. And so the championship is a thought process of each individual discipline has a little bit of a different programs of how they would get there. This is still, in a lot of ways, a work in progress for the final details about how each discipline would arrive with their best young horses here. At the same time, there's envisioned also a festival, which would be educational in manner for each one of the disciplines to be. So not only would you have a competitive side, but you would also have an educational side happening on the same weekend. So the first off is to showcase and identify young horses with potential for the high level of performance in each one of our individual disciplines. We also, at the same time, hope that this is going to create a market for breeders. Promote American bred horses, which I think is a big part of what we really need to do, as we will get into later, I think, in each one of our individual disciplines. So we want to showcase and reward breeders, trainers, and owners, and the handlers and riders of these young horses, because I know for each one of these disciplines we also have a thing about not only finding the young horses, but also getting the young horses in hands where those young horses are going to be produced, which is then going to help a breeder make their stallions or mares, their programs, more successful. So, and then also with this, to create an incentive to buy, own, and show young horses as a discipline specific thing. I think that is an important part of it, because I will throw this out as a question in some ways, is that in other parts of the world, we really do see that there's a huge industry by itself of producing young horses only. And it's not so much here in the United States as having young horse trainers. And they're known as young horse trainers, and they produce young horses. And then hopefully with this, over the years, we'll be able to attract and make this spectator, a spectator event. We're here this weekend at the Dressage Finals, which is held here at the Kentucky Horse Park, which is a great weekend really to introduce this concept with all of so many people here during the finals, and it's the first year of the Dressage Finals. That's right.
First year.
Yeah, first year. So there's a lot of inaugural stuff going on at the same time. And being here yesterday, a very successful, I think, first year championship for the Dressage. And hopefully in the last we'll be able to promote educational opportunities in breeding and development of young horses. So I wanted to start off a little bit by coming from the sport of eventing. We have a young horse program that has been started individually in a 4 and a 5-year-old class that has now reached down even into 2-year-olds in hand. And the dressage world, Scott, you have a program, a young horse program that has been going on quite a long time. How do you see this as kind of melding into this multidiscipline look at it?
I think that, first of all, this is a really, really exciting time. And I want to acknowledge all the people who are behind the scenes that are working on this whole concept. So I see this as extremely exciting. The Bundeschampionat, I think, again, is a great example that we can all look towards. And if you look at the crowds there, the mixing of disciplines, the breeders, the excitement, for me, that's what has me so excited about this whole concept. And the dressage part, I mean, I feel we're running along pretty well. We've been at it for 12 years now, and we've learned a lot along the way. We still have a lot to learn. We can always tweak and learn. And for me, the other exciting part about this is the fact that we can all learn from each other. Like even some discussions last night with Chester and some others, you're picking up on things they're saying that we can keep refreshing our own sport. So I'm very excited that we're all getting together, and this is a very exciting time, and I just think the value of this in 5 or 10 years, the vision, has me extremely excited when it's up and running.
I think it's an important part that this is the start, and it's going to take a little while to grow and can be adjusted along the way, but it's certainly a great jumping off point. Chester, from a driving point of view, do you feel like this is needed in the world of driving?
Wow. I've seen a few different things. I've worked together with Chris Knox and Wendy Ying in helping develop this criteria. One thing that I've seen very interesting or unique in the driving sport is there are many breeds and disciplines, the Morgans, the Arabians, that are very suitable for the combined driving sport and suitable horses to go up through the levels. But there's a disconnect between the breed sport and the sport. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot sort of late in the United States, which is sort of interesting, or a breed or a group of horses that seem to excel and do quite well at the international sport, is sort of the KWPN sort of Dutch harness horse. And believe it or not, in the United States, the Amish people have taken up breeding a lot of these horses. But the funny thing is, there's no concept or idea of the fundamental of training and developing those horses to the elite sport of driving. So my hope is this will allow people who go to the effort and have the passion for breeding and searching out young horses to be able to give them a program to develop horses into the next level, whether that's an Amish person who's breeding something that they're hoping to do something with, or perhaps something that comes out of other disciplines that seem to be suitable, like the Morgans, which is a breed, or some of the ponies. And the other possibility, I guess, is the other concept. I don't see that as that likely, because all too often I've seen too many horses become driving horses because people have said, you know, this horse doesn't have any jumping talent, and it doesn't have any talent as a driving or as a ridden dressage horse, therefore it must be a driving horse. And unfortunately, that's not usually how it works. It's usually talented young horses that seem to be talented in just about anything they do, that go on to be good driving horses. The young horses that I've had success developing mostly are horses that I've purchased in different places. I've never, frankly, never really bought young horses in the same country, so there's no correlation there. For me personally, I've just found good young talent, and I bought them at dressage stables. I bought them at jumping stables. I bought and developed them into driving horses. And as of late, I've found people who have actually made a market in Europe, and that's some part of what I hope happens here as well.
I know I'm from a sport that I had the same growing up, coming through it. It was the event horse was the one that already missed everything else. Wasn't fast enough to be a steeplechase horse, wasn't a good enough mover to be a dressage horse, and not a careful enough horse, and so, well, it's got to be an event horse. So now that's very much changed. I mean, and much more sport specific and sport specific breeding for event horses. The way that this is going to work today is that everybody that is up here is going to present really a program that within each of their disciplines of how they would get to this championship, from a driving, from a hunter, from a dressage and eventing point of view. And as we go forward, I think through the day and a little bit tomorrow about some of the specifics, I think the exciting part is about thinking about comparing the sport-specific things between the different disciplines and seeing what the similarities are and what the difference is. If, like, from my sport, there's a huge difference between a 3-star horse and a 4-star horse. Almost like in dressage, the difference between a Président Georges horse and a Grand Prix horse. I mean, it's a huge difference. And really in the breeding, where is the difference? Do you find that, Robert, with the jumping thing, where in your discipline, do you find that it's harder to be able to purchase horses that really are true meter-60 horses?
Yeah, I would say for sure. We've seen skyrocketing prices, and there's an economic model that we have to really get into the discussion. We're all here, and we're coming. And Scott, I agree with what you said in the very beginning. This is a learning experience for all of us. And when it comes to the technical aspect and how the championship should be formatted, whatever, I'm going to be turning everything over to Karsten. Karsten, thank you for coming. For one thing, we go way back. We rode internationally together in the same era, and we won't mention when that was. But anyway, thank you for coming here. What I have said all along is that our biggest problem within our discipline isn't really identifying the next superstars, although clearly that is an issue. But it's really getting the economic model so that it works. We're looking for our next group of young horses, and at the same time we're looking for our next group of young professionals. And it all ties into the same thing. We have a discipline that's very expensive. Our events are very expensive. The costs are expensive. And when you hear the riders, when you hear everybody involved with the sport, especially when it comes to young horses, we just keep hearing how expensive it is. In Europe, and this is the model that we're going to be talking about this weekend, clearly they're far ahead of us when it comes to the championships and developing the horses. But there's one aspect that I think sometimes gets forgotten, and that is bringing those horses along. Once identified, that crucial period between 4 and 7, let's say, that is the really expensive time. And our economic model over here is completely different from the European one, and that's where our owners, our professionals can't afford that bringing along process. And so therefore that big gap, in my mind, is the biggest problem that we have. When you see the European model, one of the aspects is you have all the breeders, you have the horses, and during that period there are an awful lot of testing events, which often, I mean, just to boil it down to the simplistic, You see breeders, when you go over there to buy a horse, well, there's a show right down the road, 10 miles down the road, and basically it's a field that somebody's put a rope around, and you got jumps there, and you've got everybody there, and that's the training ground, yet you still have the top young professionals and professionals bringing those horses along. We don't have that over here. And if we have to incorporate those young horses into the model that we have, the A circuit model, we're going to end up 10 years from now the same place we are now. I've been hammering this issue for the last year or so, every time we have our blue ribbon panel and so forth, is that we have to get the costs down. And several show organizations around the country, in California, we've done it, and we've done it on the East Coast as well. We've started age-specific classes with very reduced fees, with down to zero entry fees and reduced stall fees and so forth. And this is catching on, and this is catching on in a big way, because what I've always said is that, yes, number one, we can't do what they do in Europe. We don't have as many potential facilities to have the smaller, unrecognized shows. And on top of that, we have arguably the best infrastructure in the world when it comes to shows. So why should we deprive those young horses of the best course designers, the best jumps, the best organization when we have that? If we can just reduce that aspect of the cost in the model, I think we'll be ahead of the game. And the second benefit is what I said with the young professionals. We're constantly looking, where are we going to get our next young professionals from? So when you talk to our top professional riders, so many of them have already bought those young horses, but they've kept them in Europe because that's where they can afford it. And it's during that interim time when the horse, it's not exactly clear what direction they're going to go. And that's when that horse is under the control of our top professionals. And is it going to end up in the meter 60? Is it going to end up in the amateur division? Where's the slot going to be? And you want that development to be working. If we could bring and change the model so that those horses, it's affordable to bring them over there and be part of our show situation. Now all of a sudden you have a huge group of horses that need riders, and that's where the young professionals slot in. And we're looking for the spots for the young professionals to mentor under our top star riders. So not only do we solve is our next generation of international stars coming from the rider point of view, but the horses as well. So that's what I'm going to be hammering on my issue. At the same time, if we can look to what really works on the championship level and that whole system in Europe, we're going to be having a lot of learning going on this weekend.
One of the differences here, instead of having also just a young horse category, we're really talking about in this situation of having age specific. I mean, so the 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, the 4-year-olds compete against the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds competing against the 5-year-olds, 6, and in some disciplines going up to a 7-year-old, which is what my discipline is kind of looking at. It already has an established 4- and 5-year-old track, but the 6- and 7-year-olds is something that we don't really have a strong program for. And so I think that is an important aspect of really the progression of the horses, is that really setting the parameters to what do we ask a 4-year-old? What do we want to see out of the 4-year-old? What do we want to see out of the 5-year-old? What do we want to see out of the 6-year-old? In the hunter world, this is also more of a new concept, I think, for doing it age specific instead of just having it in a larger category. Is that something that you feel like the hunter group is looking to embrace in that world, Mary?
We're just starting to think about going to age groups away from pre-green, first year, second year. That's a very large discussion that's going to happen at our annual meeting this year, but I think that I could say that Bill and I are very strongly in favor of that. It makes a lot of sense for our sport. And as far as the program in general, we already have a very successful model on our side in the pony finals that embraces breeding and performance together. So I think we could see, if we want to examine that part of our sport, that the breeding part would work well, and then age groups, that just makes sense, because if you have children, why would you have your 10-year-old child play against a 14-year-old child if they were playing football, let's say? And horses are the same.
Yeah, and Karsten, do you really feel that this is a blank slate we have here? We have a whiteboard that we get to play with. How long has the Bundeschampionships been? How old is that program?
When my memory is good enough, I think we start 76 with that. And the first years, the Bundeschampionat was on different places, but really fast it grows up so that we can't find an organizer who make it. And so I think it was 1980 or 1982 that we say the Bundeschampionat will be every year in Warendorf on the federation. There we have enough place for it, and they have an organization and have a lot of people who help them. And I have all the details in a presentation, in a PowerPoint presentation. I can show you that later. And I think all of us, the riders, the breeders, the organizers, are happy that they have made this decision to go every year on this place. We have now round about 1,000 horses over 5 days only in all disciplines in Warendorf. And you can imagine that it's a lot of work. There are a lot of helpers, I think more than 200 or 300 who are helping in the organization. And okay, my part on the Bundeschampionat is that I am a judge by the jumping horses and by the eventing horses. My most important part of my life, but is not a judge. I'm more a rider, and I educated horses and riders. And I agree with that what Robert said. The most expensive years are from 3 to 6 or 7. And that's the problem for the breeders in our country. When they have no member in the family who are riding, they have to pay a lot of money when they give the horse to a profi. And that is a big risk, because when the horse is 3 or 4 years old, you never know what is the way, how is the way going till they are 6 or 7 years old. And they pay a lot of money every month. So that makes a problem for the breeders, that they are not able to pay it, that they have to sell their young horse for cheap money. And for some cases, when the horses go a good way and will be expensive, and they heard it later that his horse sold for a lot of money to the States, they are unhappy. Of course, I can feel it. My wife is also try also to breed horses, a little bit more dressage horses. But I know in the end how difficult it is. When you want to breed a dressage horse, in the end you have maybe a jumper or eventing or a hunter. You never know what is the product. I think the very most important thing what we have in Germany is that we make the education for the young horses. We make no difference between jumper, we don't have the hunter, but between jumper, eventer, or dressage horses. The first 2 years, 3, 4 to 5, it's the same way. There's no difference. We try to make the horse ready in the body, in the handling, in that they trust the rider, and then we go a little bit another way when it's a jumper or dressage horse. But in the end, the first year, that's important. And we have a really good system, I think. And this good system based on a good dressage work. And we have only a good jumping horse when they are able that we can have a good feeling that they listen what the riders want that they listen of the aims of the riders, and when there's not a good base in the end, the horse will be not so long in the sport, because there will be more problems, or the riders take other bits and try to make compromise. So I think the base work is the most important work. And that is a ground idea also from our Bundes championship.
You could lead into getting onto a soapbox in a heartbeat for all of us, I think, that are involved at the high levels of our sport, because I think, as Robert alluded to, really the training of the professionals, the young professionals, is as big of a part of this, or an opportunity of this, as actually with the horses, which is a system that I'm going to have to be, I think, very honest with, here in the United States is weak. I mean, there's the lack of a systematic approach to training horses. It's still more of an individual, and some of us were brought up in a very classical, educated way, but that has gone away here. And I think with the interest of what's happened here in all of the, at least in our three disciplines, I know that is a high interest from the leaders of our three disciplines to bring that back, to bring a systematic side to training that is repeatable and repeatable and repeatable and repeatable. And I think that is a great opportunity here. When we're presenting here, each discipline is going to present what their ideas are. And we are recording this for the USEF, mainly so we can get this out to all of the disciplines and around the country. So it's not live, so editing is going to happen. But but as we are going to put this out, we're going to packages and get this out across the country, so everybody can start to create a little bit of groundswell about what is going to happen, and knowing that this is going to take time. When I hear that the championships in Germany started in 1976. Yeah. So we're not going to be able to create everything here in the first 2 years of having that type of success rate, and also realizing that a center of Warndorf is the emotional center of horse sports in Germany as much as anything, and the closest we have here is probably the Kentucky Horse Park, where we're sitting here today, is becoming an emotional center for all the different sports, and with so many of the championships, with the dressage championships here, with the Rolex Kentucky 3-day event, with the national show jumping, and it really has become a center for us, and to promote that. So we want to start, I think, we'll close up the first session here with our introductions, and I think the first one is going to do Chester. You're our first up. To present a program of what driving is thinking. I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's already shown to be an interesting, there are interesting topics on the floor for all of us, and I hope we really, in this next day, be able to get into it and not afraid to put some things onto the table of what the possibilities are here, not just what the technical side of what we're going to run next week. So, sorry, next year. See, that's one of the editing things right there. Right, next year. It's happening next week. Oh, yeah, by the way, the championships are the 15th of November next week. Right. I hope that the USEF is ready for that for next week. So we're going to have a little bit of a 5-minute break here while Chester kind of gets ready, and we'll exit and give the stage to him by himself. So welcome to our Young Horse Championships.